gonna shake this so it doesn't go to sleep. Yeah, it's on there. It's on too, so.
Sorry. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Hello.
Is he coming? Okay. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for your patience. This is the August Board of Ed meeting, but I can't help but look forward to September when we see our students and our staff back and we begin again. I hope that you've all had a wonderful summer. And with that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll begin with the approval of the minutes of the July 6, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion, please? Lisa Casilla, Shawnee Park. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Approval for the minutes of July 8, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Approval of the minutes for July 14th, 2021. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Chang, seconded by Ms. Park. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Dr. Rufo, please give us the treasurer's report and the appropriation adjustments.
Thank you. The cash on hand for the treasurer's report for the month of ending June 30th, 2021 shows that the cash balance was $100,862,828.36. It also shows that all bank balances for all cash accounts were reconciled to the book balances and were collateralized in accordance with the district's banking agreements and investment policies.
Thank you, Dr. Rufo. May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Dr. Rogers, please give us the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Obviously, the big news is going to be talking about the reopening of schools in September, but before we get to that, I also want to update the board and the public on where we are with the Universal Pre-K program. So just by way of background, in the state budget, which was adopted back in April, there was an unexpected allocation for a program that's existed for a long time, Universal Pre-K. Syosset has never been given a grant for this program. We didn't seek the grant, it was just awarded to the district. That's put us in the position of having to scramble a little bit to figure out how to build a program. The program is for a full day program, but the allocation is only about $5,400 per pupil. At that rate, it would cover 119 students, but we don't have room in our school district in our facilities to host it. So we went through the process of issuing a request for proposals from potential other vendors who might be able to use those grant funds and offer pre-K space for students. So we did receive 2 viable proposals. Those 2 proposals, even together, would not be for more than about 60 seats. So about half of what our allocated seats would be. So we're reopening the RFP process to see if we can identify additional people, additional providers rather, that would be able to offer seats so that we could expend the full grant amount. We wouldn't want to not expend any monies that we might have access to, and certainly we would want to provide as many members of the community with pre-K opportunity as we possibly could. So with that said, on the agenda this evening, you have 2 potential vendors to award to. We're still in the process of negotiating contracts with both of those vendors, so those negotiations aren't completed, but if you approve those items this evening, we will continue those negotiations and hopefully settle them. And we'll continue to see if there are other providers that can take up the remaining 60 seats or so. What we need to do, obviously, is share this information with parents soon, so parents have the opportunity to apply for these seats. If there are more interested students than there are seats, we'll have to conduct a lottery, and we'll know more about that shortly, and we'll put something out to the community to let people know. The one thing we don't have is space available in any of our buildings, even if a provider wanted to operate their program on our campus. We just don't have room for it, and we wouldn't have room for it in an ordinary year, and certainly in this year where we're trying to maximize social distancing. we're even more restricted in the amount of space that we have available. So in short, assuming the board approves the proposals that we put in front of you this evening, we'll move forward with a process by which members of the community can apply for the seats that we do have available, and if additional seats become available, we'll notify the board, we'll notify the community as well. On to reopening. So one of the big challenges with reopening this year, contrasted with reopening last year, is that last year, at the beginning of the summer, we were given extensive guidance from both the Department of Health and the State Education Department, totaling hundreds of pages together, that detailed every aspect of how we would create schools. We had a reopening task force that went through that guidance, broke into subgroups, delved deep into each of the aspects of it, and built the plan that we executed last year. We were informed at the beginning of this summer that more guidance was forthcoming from the State Department of Health and the governor's office, and that we should delay putting together our plans until we received that guidance from the state. That was consistent with how things worked last year. That made sense. As the summer wore on and it got later and later, that guidance still didn't appear, and we were notified in early August that the Department of Health no longer anticipated that it would give the schools any guidance at all. The State Education Department criticized the State Department of Health and then subsequently provided their own guidance that was built off of the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics and, of course, the CDC's guidance to school, which is extensive. So that guidance from those three entities formed the basis for the work that we've been doing over the past. We've been working on this all summer, but we've obviously had to coalesce around something, and so these are the guidance documents that we've coalesced around in terms of putting together our proposal for the district. I want to just step up to sort of the 20,000-foot view for a second and talk about what our approach and our orientation to balancing risks when there are so many unknowns. Obviously, when we started in fall of 2020, we had no idea how long we were going to be able to keep schools open, whether the plans that we put into place with our best understanding at the time were going to be successful or not, and what risks we as a school district would be able to safely take as we maintained as much of our in-person instructional program as possible. So as the year wore on, and we felt that we had managed our protocols in place, we slowly would make one change at a time and then digest the results of that change to see if we created any risks or dangers in the school. So in the fall, in the absence of fall sports, we created an intramural program for students, a weight training program, a conditioning and strength program for students. We were able to do that successfully. In the middle of the year, we restored athletics. Then we subsequently restored spectators. We restored visitor spectators. We were the first school district in Nassau County to do so. In the spring, we started allowing students to use shared objects like lab equipment. We had been keeping students from sharing those things, but the data and the science showed that that was a low risk, and so we added that back. And then in the late spring, we removed plexiglass barriers in the classrooms. We relaxed the outdoor masking requirement. We expanded our community use of facilities. At each one of these steps, we introduced more opportunity, but we digested that opportunity. For this fall, we're adding a number of things that would represent additional in-person opportunities, but also changes to our program that we would want to digest before we moved into taking on any further risks. So the big changes are full-time in-person learning that's available to all students in school, full-time everyday attendance at the high school as opposed to the every other day, but obviously that will more than double the student density at the high school, a return to typical school bus routing, data and evidence that the school buses have not been a source of spread if they have masking and good ventilation, and back to the 9-period day and the switching of classes in middle school, which I know our middle schoolers appreciate and look forward to. So the approach would be to do this year, as we did last year, obviously digest all of these changes, and these are all major changes to be making simultaneously before making any additional changes. to the program that we had in place. But our goal, and when I've been asked what our focus has been on this coming year, I say that we're going to try and get as far back towards the 2019 program as we can. We're going to chip away and get as close as we can without taking out any risks that we can't back out from. So obviously the question has come up about layered mitigation strategies, and what does that mean? That's masking combined with social distancing, combined with hand washing, combined with temperature taking, all of the things that we've done to try and identify and prevent the transmission of COVID-19. What we said internally was our job is to make the Syosset School District the most inhospitable environment for a virus that we possibly can. One thing that struck me, this is a chart that's prepared by the New York State Department of Health. They release it every week. And this is how many influenza cases, common flu, seasonal flu, are in the state. And this is the last 4 years of data. And you can see 3 peaks there that are pretty high mountains, as many as 160,000 cases a year. This last year, in the flu season, there were fewer than 5,000 cases. So I think that is pretty strong evidence that these layered mitigation strategies are effective at reducing respiratory virus transmission. But the influenza respiratory virus is not a particularly, the seasonal flu is not a particularly transmissible illness compared to, obviously, COVID-19 and some of the more contagious illnesses that are out there. This chart is prepared by NPR and illustrates where the original COVID-19 strain is versus the Delta strain, but it also shows where it is relative to very contagious diseases like mumps and measles. So not nearly as contagious as those, but significantly more contagious than the original strain or something like the seasonal flu, which is why we still saw transmission of COVID-19 through the year, even though we were able to reduce substantially the amount of flu. What's our local transmission data? As you know, we follow this data closely. We publish it on our website essentially daily. And we're nowhere near the peak that we experienced in the January and February timeframe. Thank goodness for that. But we obviously have returned into what would have been the red zone previously in the year in terms of 15 cases, roughly 15 cases per day, daily average per 100,000 people, and a positivity rate over 3% in both Nassau County, also in Suffolk County, by the way, and in our school district. So we haven't reported a lot of cases over the summer because those are 2 different data sets. The cases we've reported over the summer have people who are working in summer school or attending summer school. The data on the green line is developed by the New York State Department of Health, and it reflects individuals who have tested positive, who are school age, and who live with a Syosset School District address. So these would be people who aren't participating in our children who aren't participating in our summer school program, but nevertheless would be in our school district. So the point of this is that even though we do enjoy very high vaccination rates, both in Nassau County and especially here in Syosset and Woodbury, we're still seeing transmission of the virus here. So I think it might be helpful to talk about what's the same and what's different, because as I tried to illustrate earlier, we didn't want to make all the changes at once because we want to try and digest some of these changes to see how much we've elevated risk before moving to some additional changes. So what remains the same is the idea of layered mitigation strategies, starting with masks, but reducing the physical distancing recommendations for students because the CDC said that it's safe to do so. By reducing that physical distancing recommendation for students from 6 feet to 3 feet, obviously we can have more students in classrooms. That's what makes it possible to have the high school back to full-time high school instead of an every other day hybrid. We're obviously going to manage any cases that we discover in school as aggressively as we did last year. We're going to clean as aggressively as we did last year. Contact tracing will work in the same way that it did last year. It'll be a joint effort of us, our school district contact tracing team, and the County Department of Health. 2 things have changed, though, since last year. The first is individuals who are vaccinated and who are close contacts will not have to quarantine. Obviously, that's a huge advantage for middle school, high school students who've been vaccinated. Even if we discover that they've been in close contact with someone who is infected, they won't have to quarantine. The CDC recommends that they get tested with a rapid test 4 or 5 days after their exposure, just to be sure, but that's not a requirement. The other thing that's changed about contact tracing is for students who are 3 feet apart, as long as both of those students are effectively masked, they will not be considered close contacts if one of them turns out to be COVID positive. Again, that's a huge advantage for being able to keep students in school because we had last year 574 cases of COVID in Syosset schools, and those cases resulted in obviously hundreds and hundreds of contact tracing investigations. And because we were at 6 feet last year, very few quarantines, and our hope would be even at 3 feet, we would have very few quarantines because we don't want to disrupt children's education. Although the guidance doesn't recommend the daily temperature screening, we think it's a good idea. We did identify a number of individuals last year that were positive as a result of the daily temperature screening, so it was effective and it reduced the number of people who were potentially exposed. The state has recommended not having high-risk sports in high transmission regions. So we are a high transmission region, but I believe that our sports are Section 8, the sports governing body for Nassau County, intends to move ahead with all sports, including the high-risk sports. So rather than canceling the high-risk sports, we would continue the weekly testing for unvaccinated students, but there's no requirement or need to test vaccinated students for those high-risk sports. So what's different? Obviously, full-time in-person learning, full-time everyday attendance at the high school, physical distancing for students reduced to 3 feet. That will make the classrooms feel like much more normal environments. The contact tracing, as I mentioned, normal bus seating, normal seasons for our athletic teams, and although we'll be taking the temperatures, no need to do the daily attestation forms, and the middle school will go back to something that's much more familiar. Continuing on, what remains the same? Obviously, mask breaks remain important, cleaning protocols remain important, air filtration and ventilation remain important. We'll continue with the portable hand washing stations that we installed. We'll try to move as much outdoors as we possibly can, lunches and classes. We will have to always be ready to pivot to virtual. Even though we only had a handful of days of virtual instruction this last year, I thought students and staff both managed it beautifully. And as this virus has proven, it can be unpredictable. We'll have to be ready for the unpredictable. Last fall, the board approved the construction of forced mechanical ventilation systems in the secondary schools. They already existed in the elementaries. Those are almost complete. We've been working on them all summer. We hope to have them commissioned in September. We received a lot of complaints from students and teachers alike that the Chromebooks, because they were older models, were not as useful when we switched to a lot of virtual instruction. So those are being replaced, they're end of life. And then we hope to use the cafeteria more and less eating in classrooms and more eating in cafeterias. Again, making the school a more normal environment to the extent possible. So we've had twin focus here. Obviously we have, as always, our academic focus here. And while we saw, I think, remarkable work by our teachers with virtual instruction and hybrid instruction, there's still the need for many students to catch back up to where they would have been if they had had typical instruction last year. We want for the program to return as much as possible to the pre-pandemic program that we had. And obviously, our teachers are still going to have to be agile. But we've also been focusing on the social and emotional health of our students. We recognize that this has been a trying year for them. So in this year's budget, we had allocation to hire 2 additional social workers with some federal pass-through grant funds that were made available. We've been planning and will shortly start having professional development days for our staff so that they're focused on how they can support our students after a very trying 25 months. And then lastly, as we move back to the all in-person environment, we realize that there are some students that have not been in school for 16, 17, 18 months that are going to need some help socially integrating back into the school environment. And we want to make sure that we do that thoughtfully and skillfully. So with that said, certainly happy to take questions from the board.
Ms. Chang?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rogers, for the lengthy report. I have two questions. The first one regarding the universal pre-K. How soon do you expect the registration to be open for the community? This way parents can plan ahead as well. And the second question is that you had mentioned that middle school will be going back to 9-period day pre-pandemic. So I assume that the elective classes will be added back to the schedule. And then does that include Project Beyond in the schedule? Thank you.
Thanks for those questions. So obviously we understand that time is of the essence with universal pre-K, but we also don't want to rush the contracting process. And one of the important aspects of that is making sure that these partners are adequately insured. So that will still take some time. I would hope that we would be able to start getting some information out in the next week or 10 days or so. I think that's probably as fast as we can go, at least with the first round of providers. And then if we bring on a second round of providers, it might be another week and a half after that. With the middle school, yes, the plan is to restore the electives. Project Beyond this year ran as a school-wide enrichment program, and so for the coming year we would anticipate that also running in the same format as a school-wide enrichment program. So the first thing to establish would be to add back the electives and then leave Project Beyond as it was this year, and then reconsider that at the end of this year.
Susan Falkov has a question.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to know if you could elaborate for the community what the protocols are going to be for lunch. I know a lot of people have expressed concern about whether, they'll not have masks, so whether they'll have to quarantine and the distance of the children in all the different levels of school, how far apart they'll be eating, and the quarantine protocols if somebody should test positive.
So the guidance says to have students eat the guidance says exactly, maximize the amount of distance when students are eating. So our goal is to have students eat at a distance of 6 feet, which is the distance that we had them at this past year. And that will mean that it will look different at elementary schools, middle schools, and the high school. But at each of those levels, the principals have been putting together plans specific to their school and the space that's in their school. And so at an elementary school, that may mean some eating in the classroom, some eating in the cafeteria, some eating in another shared space like a gym, and then having to rotate through those spaces so that not every kid is eating in the classroom every day. But the idea would be to eat at 6 feet for safety's sake, but to have more use of the cafeteria where there was very little this year.
Brian?
How's it now? How close can we expect the classrooms to be to normal if we're working under a 3-foot distancing instead of 6?
So again, I think the answer to that question will also vary by level. So at the elementary schools, it will certainly look more like normal than the 6-foot distancing with plexiglass that we experienced at the beginning of this year. However, it won't be some of the things that we think of as familiar in an elementary classroom, like all the kids gather on the rug and they're read to, or all the kids gather on the rug and they turn and talk to one another and they partner up to work on things, or students collaborate on a science project where they're side by side with one another for 10, 15 minutes at a time. That part won't be like normal, but the classroom will feel a lot more like normal, and it will be easier for students at 3 feet apart to be able to turn to one another and have conversations than it was when they were 6 feet apart trying to have conversations. And I applaud our teachers for trying to do things like having students use their Chromebooks to make virtual breakout groups where they could pair up and not have to kind of shout across the room at one another. It won't be necessary to do that in the same way. At the secondary schools, these will look more like familiar classrooms because the number of students in the classroom will be roughly similar to pre-pandemic levels. Maybe the desks are pushed out a little bit more. And again, there isn't as much group work or partner work, or that group and partner work won't function in exactly the same way, but it'll look a lot more like a regular classroom.
Dr. Rogers, could you elaborate on the mask breaks protocol? I know that last year we were talking in the beginning of the year discussing 10 versus 15 minutes and how it's going to be administered and so forth, and I believe those mask breaks never happened for some students. Is it up to the teacher to announce how it's going to be done in that particular class? Can a student who is comfortable, taking the mask off for a few minutes to take that break, will they be allowed to ask the teacher? How does this work specifically? Is it in class mask breaks? Do they go outside? Do they go in a corner? How is this monitored?
Well, ideally, what we would do in the classes is what we talked about last summer, which when we were taking a mask break, we were imagining the classroom as a checkerboard. And so you'd have every other student take the mask off so that there would be distance between the two students who were simultaneously unmasked, as opposed to having to have a student relocate in the classroom during their mask break. Obviously, one big change from last year is we now don't think of the outdoor environment as being as risky as the indoor environment. So the removal of masks outside, masks are just simply optional outside. So if a class is outdoors or if a student is taking their lunch outside, the mask is something that's entirely their choice. In the classroom, we were looking for fewer than 10 minutes because that wouldn't trigger the contact tracing protocol if somebody was ill and then result in a student being quarantined. And teachers were supposed to space those out throughout the day. So what we'll be doing, the building principals work with Mr. Cardillo on putting together those plans. We have our administrative retreat with them at the end of this week, and we'll be next week, and we'll be going over those mask break procedures with them.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Dr. Rogers. There's no correspondence or legislative items. Before we get to audience to the public, I see that we have many people out here, and to the extent that you haven't been to a board meeting before, I just wanted to go over the audience to the public rules, which are also in the agenda packet that you may have picked up outside. So the procedure is that you must be a resident in order to come to the podium and address the board. And so we will ask for you to state your name so we know who we're speaking with. And there is a log at the podium, so you can please put your name and your address. And that way, if we can't answer a question that you asked today, we have a means to contact you. In addition, the people who come to the podium will have an initial 4 minutes to speak. At the end of that 4 minutes, if you're still going, I will ask you, respectfully of course, to please take your seat and allow someone else in the audience to come up and speak. After everyone in the audience has gotten to speak once, we will take a break and attempt to address any questions that have been asked of us. At that point, if anyone wants to come to ask a follow-up question or to address the board a second time, you'll have an additional 4 minutes to address the board. But we do ask that you keep to the 4 minutes and respect our need to treat everyone the same no matter what topic they raise. We don't allow the speaking about particular staff members or particular student issues because of privacy rules that we have to follow and federal laws and privacy laws. So we thank you for respecting that. And with that, we'll begin audience to the public. So if anyone would like to address the board, please come up to the podium.
Hi there. My name is Kelly Brocky. I'm a resident of Syosset, and my children attend Syosset High School. I'm going to just read a statement that I wrote because I'm not a very good public speaker, so here I go. I am for individual choice when it comes to the mask discussion. I personally oppose mask mandates for my child. I believe that each parent has the right to choose whether their child will wear a mask or not based on their personal knowledge of their child's physical and emotional needs. I feel that the school board does not have the right to determine what is best for each individual child. That decision is between a parent and their doctor. I believe that each parent has the right to make the individual choice on whether their child should wear a mask in school. I would never tell another parent what is best for their child, as I would hope that they would not tell me what's best for my child. I feel that if you want to wear a mask, if you want your child to wear a mask at school, that should be your choice, and I hope that you would support my choice. My decision to not want my child to wear a mask in school comes from basic science and biology. Data suggests that children have a very low risk of getting COVID. This is due in part to the lack of the ACE2 receptors that are in children's nostrils. As a result, children are less likely to spread COVID to other children, teachers, parents, or other people in the home. Children do not need masks to protect themselves from COVID, and they don't need masks to protect other people from COVID. The school setting remains one of the safest and lowest risk environments. Masks for children with near zero risk of transmission and illness from COVID is not necessary, and masks are actively damaging to a child's health and social well-being. I would like to speak directly to all the parents in the room. Did you know that masks are less effective and do not function after about 20 minutes due to the saturation of moisture when the child breathes or when all of you are breathing? Bacteria and germs accumulate on the inner and outer layers of the mask, where the child will repeatedly rebreathe them back into their bodies. Breathing through a face mask will increase the temperature and humidity in the space between the mask and the mouth, resulting in an increase in the toxic particles in the mask material itself and the release of the toxic particles in the mask itself. Rebreathing contaminated air with high bacterial and toxic particle concentrations, along with low oxygen levels and high CO2 levels, causes an increase in toxicity and immunodepression in your child's body. When wearing a mask, exhaled viruses are not able to escape, and they will concentrate back in the nasal passages and enter the olfactory nerves and potentially travel back to the brain. This causes a child to be predispositioned in an increase in viral and bacterial infections and illnesses. Rebreathing exhaled air will create oxygen deficiency and increase in carbon dioxide levels in the blood. The developing brain of a child is very sensitive to oxygen deprivation, which causes metabolic changes in the brain's neural cells, which are important in the child's cognitive function and brain plasticity. Acute warning symptoms of decreased oxygen intake are headaches, drowsiness, dizziness, reduced ability to concentrate, and reduction in cognitive functions. Did you know that your child's going to spend about 270 minutes a day in their mask? In addition to the above adverse effects of mask wearing, parents also report that their child suffered from irritability, anxiety, less happiness, reluctance to go to school, malaise, impaired learning, and fatigue. Along with the physical effects of mask wearing on children, there's a substantial psychological effect, including activation of the fear-stress response, or the fight or flight. There's a rise in stress hormones, chronic stress conditions, fear, mood disturbances, insomnia, and depression.
Ms. Brockie, thank you so much, and you're actually speaking very well,
Oh, thank
despite
you.
your concerns. I hate to do this to you, but it's been 4 minutes.
Oh,
and
thank
so
you.
If you'd
I
like to
appreciate
come
it.
back after the first round, you may.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How you doing? I've never been to one of these before, but basically what's been going on for the past year, I felt like I had to come. I'm sorry. My name is David Colonna. I have 2 small children in Village School, and I don't have anything written up. I just wanted to voice my opinion. I like to think I speak from common sense. And first off, I just want to bring up a couple of points on some of the slides that you presented. I know you guys think that you cured the flu basically this past year, but in all actuality, you didn't, because the only reason why the flu cases are down because no one tested for it this year. When you went to the doctor, you were sniffling, they gave you a COVID test, and they sent you home. You did not get tested for the flu, so the flu didn't magically go away. Your other charts that you show about the virus having its moments, we've been wearing masks for over a year now, and it hasn't done anything to slow this virus. So, the virus is going to virus no matter what we do. This virus is not going away. It's a respiratory virus. So after the Delta variant is over and done with, there's going to be another variant. The Lambda variant, I'm hearing, is the next one. So my question to everyone is, when does this end? When do we stop the madness? The people in this room are all probably vaccinated, and everyone is socially distanced and wearing masks and vaccinated. What you're doing to our kids, I'm just listening to some of the things that you guys are talking about. Lunch 6 feet apart. Do you guys eat 6 feet apart when you go to a restaurant? I don't think so. Everyone's getting back to normal now. Stadiums are packed full of thousands and thousands of people, and our kids can't eat lunch together. When you take mask breaks, every other kid in a room is allowed to take their mask off. Have we lost our minds with our kids? What we're doing to them? As she eloquently stated before, there's no threat to the kids. They don't transmit the virus. I don't know what we are doing. We haven't learned anything in the past year. I give you guys all the credit for opening up school last year, and I was very happy that you did. And with the way that my kids were in school, I was just happy they were there. So I give you all that credit. But it seems like a year has gone by, and we have learned nothing. Nothing. You moved 6 feet, went to 3 feet. There's no more surface contamination. They weren't allowed to touch anything, and you're still, worried about that. The CDC even said that that's not where contamination comes from. It's a respiratory virus. So my question to you, again, is when does this end? It's not going away. When do we stop with the masks, with the 6 feet, with the social distancing? When do our kids get back to normal? Everyone else is going back to normal. When do our kids go back to normal? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pragati Tandon. Hi, my name is Pragati Tandon, and I live in Woodbury. My daughter's Walt Whitman. I wanted to actually thank you, Dr. Rogers and the board, for your wonderful presentation, and I would like to speak in support of your recommendations for the safe reopening for our children. Many children, all of the ones under 12, are not eligible for vaccination, and we have no idea when they will be. We know that vaccines work, but we also know that masks work. And I do agree with all of your recommendations, including the 3 feet in the classroom and the 6 feet at lunch. So I just wanted to thank you for your kind appreciation for the safety of our children, our teachers, and our essential staff. As you eloquently stated, the Delta variant is different than the Alpha variant with which we have been dealing. Unfortunately, we do see that children are getting sick, as is evidenced in the South and other places that have already been in school. I agree with keeping our children safe and keeping them in person, because we do know that in-person schooling is beneficial for children. And the best way to keep in-person schooling and to help prevent breakthrough infections for our vaccinated teachers and staff, and illness and avoidance of school for contact tracing and illness for our children, is universal masking. And so I just wanted to thank you for the safety that you have had in mind for our children. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danielle Kronkel, and I just have 2 quick questions for the board. I would like to know the specific criteria that is used by the district doctor to determine whether or not a child receives a 504 medical exemptions for kids who cannot medically tolerate masks. If the district doctor never medically treats the child, why would the medical decision of the child's own doctor not always be upheld? Thank you.
Members of the school board and Superintendent Rogers, my name is Dr. Shuttle Shah. I'm a pediatrician, neonatologist, and a Syosset resident. I'm also the volunteer immediate past president of the local American Academy of Pediatrics, which represents 1,500 pediatricians across our region. And I was actually involved in the drafting of the local American Academy of Pediatrics version of the guidelines on school reopening. And I'm here to thank you for understanding and prioritizing the safety of our district's kids. Pediatricians in our community and across the nation joined the overwhelming medical consensus that universal masking is a priority until the impact of so many children returning to the close confines of school on COVID positivity rates is known. That opinion is echoed by the National Institute of Health, the CDC, and over every major medical specialty organization. And if you add up the memberships of those organizations, you have the power of 389,415 physicians and public health professionals endorsing these guidelines. That amount of expertise alone should pause anyone from considering invalidating them, especially when you consider how rare it is that we achieve that level of universal medical consensus. As of this writing, the positivity rates in our region are quickly increasing, having reached 4.3 to 4.5% last week. That's tenfold higher than they were 5 weeks ago. This, of course, has been attributed to the Delta variant, and we also need to be wary of the fact that while we do enjoy some relatively high immunization rates in our community, as Dr. Rogers has alluded to, immunization rates across Nassau County vary from 12% to 99% based on zip code. Concurrent with an increase in these cases, pediatricians are seeing an upsurge of hospitalizations. Though only 2% of pediatric COVID infections result in hospitalization, we have to be mindful that the number of pediatric beds in our area is very limited. Right now, many beds are being used to make up for the care children missed during the pandemic, such as for chemotherapy that was delayed or congenital heart surgery repairs that were delayed. Our local pediatric medical infrastructure simply cannot safely handle major increases in childhood COVID infections and the inevitable rise of hospitalizations that will follow. Further, up to 10% of children who contract COVID are at risk for the multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, which can be life-threatening and whose full effects are not yet known. I express my strong appreciation for this board's acknowledgement that masking is a well-known tool to reduce community spread of infection. Simply put, universal masks, while not perfect, do work. 11 independent studies from across the United States and Washington, D.C., and the city of Boston have demonstrated that masks can reduce community spread by up to 77%. But even more effective are the COVID vaccines, which can be up to 93% effective in reducing infection and play a major role in reducing transmission. And I would ask this school board to strongly consider, when the time is appropriate and when full FDA administration approval is granted for the vaccine, to strongly consider any and all means to increase childhood vaccination rates and to increase vaccination rates among school district staff and faculty. It's important to remember that right now, only 25% of 12 to 15-year-olds nationally are vaccinated. I know from my colleagues that school boards across both Nassau and Suffolk County are encountering small, passionate, and highly vocal minorities of parents, mostly medically and epidemiologically untrained, who seek to undermine the scientific validity of these recommendations. But I thank you for listening to experts and resisting tactics and proceeding with caution when it comes to our children, which is the reason we all live here. Thank you.
One second. My name is Peter Wolf. I'm a resident of Syosset. I have 2 children in the village school. And I was just wondering, given all that's going on, we have no idea what is a majority and what is a minority in this community. But does the board have any statistics to back up student-to-student transmission, student to teacher, teacher to student, what have you, transmission of the virus? I think many of the arguments presented here were thoughtful, and I hope you'll be able to back up your actions with regards to this virus. I'll reserve the rest of my time. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Kanwal Khan Rashid. I have 2 kids in the district. I just wanted to say in support of you guys, I'm thinking you've done a great job this whole year. And I just want to say I'm not a doctor or any other expert, so I can't state on that. But all I'm going to say is that even kids may have a lower risk of getting it themselves. I mean, we've heard from a lot of experts that they can still be asymptomatic and transfer that to their parents, their teachers, someone. In my own house, I can tell you, I have asthma. I get a cold and I can get really sick. I wouldn't want that. And we also have a grandparent who is very, very fragile, and we wouldn't want to pass it on to our grandparents or our parents or other people who could get it just because, our kids may be asymptomatic and they may not get sick, but they could lose a parent, they could lose a grandparent or someone. So thank you so much for everything that you've done this year for schools and continue to do.
Hi, I'm Nina Rashid. I'm a student at Syosset High School, and I'm also the president and founder of the Interfaith Club at the school. And this past year, we, along with the Muslim Student Association and Jewish Student Union, actually petitioned for the school to offer kosher, vegan, and halal lunch options. And they said they would have that by this upcoming school year, so I was just wondering about the status of that, if you knew.
Thank you. You have a few more minutes if you'd like to address us with any other issues, and then you can take your seat. At the end of the first round, we'll respond to as many questions as we can respond to. And then if you have any additional things you'd like to follow up with, you can come back.
Do you want to sit down? Thank you. Are you masking?
I'm going to just...
Okay, so I'll just keep it continuous.
Good evening. My name is Nikita Desai. I have a daughter going into Berry Hill. I'm a resident of Woodbury. Thank you so much for your presentation today. I really valued and appreciated everything that you shared. I am a third grade teacher in a independent school nearby, and I just also want to just say, for so many teachers that are not here today, also that I do support the 3 feet distance in the classroom, and also 6 feet apart eating. I have seen the value of doing that, teaching this last year, and what benefits there were in, having masks on in the classroom. There are creative and fun ways that teachers have used in the classroom where they have used mask breaks. They have gotten students to really, bring joy in the classroom in so many ways. So I think that making sure that we trust our teachers, that we are able to do that. I say that, and also I want to say that mid-year in our school, I'm just sharing this because we do know, in support of the lady that just spoke, that children are asymptomatic and we don't know what's happening, and the transmission is there. We had a COVID nurse that came into our school mid-year, and as soon as we started pool testing, we saw that there were students that were asymptomatic, and that is very much the case. So I'm really grateful for all of you, and with the mask requirement in the buildings. I also think that I really hope that we stay with this mandate. Well, I shouldn't say mandate, the requirement for the rest of the school year. As a teacher, and also talking about underlying risks, we don't know what students have, and if they have elderly people at home, or even if the teachers have that too. I think that's something that needs to be noted. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Monica Call. I'm going to shift the discussion a little bit to the Syosset Rowing Club, if I may. If that's okay. Right. First of all, thank you for the great presentation on the school reopening. As a physician, I fully support the current guidelines that have been put there. Working in the COVID floors for the last year and a half, this is definitely the very appropriate decision for our district. But today, I am here to discuss as a parent liaison for the Syosset Rowing Club. I want to begin first by thanking Dr. Rogers, the board, and the rest of the administration for your leadership during the pandemic. As a district, you have done an exemplary job given the circumstances. Thank you for all your hard work. In the past year and a half, you've done an excellent job. Today, we are all very thrilled and excited to be here to discuss the varsity status for the Syosset Rowing Club. Today, we're here to ask you for your continued and expanded support for the students who row in our district. As you know, sports in general sets the stage for learning lifelong skills. We have fitness, teamwork, dedication, resilience. And rowing offers a total body fitness while being the ultimate team sport. Rowing is in the same direction, literally comes from rowing. So I'd like to give you a brief background on Syosset Rowing. We have approximately 50 students, boys and girls, that practice 6 times per week, training throughout the year across all seasons. Most regattas or competitions are in the fall and spring season. During the spring, summer, and fall, practices are on the water, weather permitting. And regarding practices, thanks to your great support for busing to the beach during the school year, enrollment went up dramatically, increasing the accessibility to the sport. So thank you for that. Additionally, I would like to highlight that the rowing has other ancillary and very important benefits. It is a valuable gateway to college and scholarship opportunities. It is very much like other varsity sports or the fine arts and music programs in terms of collegiate recruiting, and importantly, admissions and affordability of higher education. And socially, kids are building great friendships, real lasting bonds, ones that will potentially last a lifetime. Rowing makes so much sense in these times, in these COVID times. It's a non-contact, low-impact sport, practicing on the beach in the open air. Boys and girls are practicing together. Boys and girls are competing together. We have access to our beautiful waterfront. We should fully utilize it and help our student community get out and enjoy our waterfront. Finally, I'd like to end with what the varsity status could mean for the broader community: diversity and access. A lot of people are attracted to our great school district because it offers diversity across socioeconomic backgrounds, as I was 15 years ago when we moved here. Having a varsity rowing program would give more students more access to rowing by eliminating the out-of-pocket costs that the students have to pay. Historically, rowing has been viewed as an inaccessible sport. We want to change that with your help. We have the equipment, we have the waterfront. Varsity status would lower and eliminate any hurdles for students who want to join the rowing. We thank you for your continued support. We will look forward to hopefully expanding the support. I will now turn over to the other parent liaison, Natalie, and I really thank you for your time and all your efforts this past year and a half, especially. You're doing a great job.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Serafian, and just before I start speaking about the rowing team, I just want to give a brief background about myself and my family.
Natalie, are you a resident?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
My husband, Alex Maneshian, and myself have lived in this district for 11 years, and we feel blessed and very grateful to be in such a great school district. We have two sons. My older son, Michael, is entering his senior year at the high school, and my younger son will be a freshman this year. So I've been a parent liaison for the Syosset Rowing Club for a little over a year, but I've been involved with the team for the last 5 years. You see, my son Michael joined the team in the 7th grade, and before that, he, not being the most athletic child, he tried a lot of different sports and team sports, could not find one that he truly enjoyed or was very good at until he found rowing. The summer before 7th grade, he found out that the rowing team, the high school rowing team, was allowing middle schoolers to try out for their team and decided to try out. He got in, and he's been hooked ever since. It has become a passion for him, and it has completely transformed him. He went from being a slightly chubby 13-year-old little boy to being a tall, strong, muscular, lean young man. So during these past 5 years, I've seen the team grow. When he first started, we were about 15 high school students to maybe 25 in some of the years per season. This past academic year, we had 42 high school rowers in the fall, we had 33 in the spring, and we had 20 middle schoolers throughout the year. So it's definitely growing, and it's becoming more popular. Unfortunately, rowing can be a very expensive sport. It's one of the biggest barriers for a school to get into the rowing game is the cost of it. But by partnering with Oyster Bay Community Rowing, which is a non-for-profit organization, Syosset School District alleviates some of that cost burden with respect to the boats and the equipment. Thankfully, OBCR has the equipment, the storage, and the staffing available in place to run a successful rowing team, as we have seen. Currently, our athletes pay a seasonal fee for both fall and spring to participate in this sport. The cost covers the salaries for the coaching staff, racing fees, equipment maintenance, insurance, other costs of running a rowing team. School funding is critical to building a more competitive team, as those monies would go into hiring more experienced coaching staff, proper maintenance and upgrades of the equipment, and lowering the barrier to entry for some of the families who cannot afford to pay those dues. Many school districts on Long Island do offer rowing programs, and we know that prestigious colleges all across the U.S. have rowing teams and are looking for students to recruit. Having a high school varsity rowing team can give our Syosset students an added advantage when applying for colleges and further reinforce the greatness of our school district. We respectfully ask that the Board of Education consider giving our rowing team varsity status to help us create a stronger, more competitive team. And if you would allow for a few more minutes of your time, I would like to invite my son Michael to speak.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Maneshian, and I'm one of the captains of the Syosset Rowing Club. I've been rowing for 5 years so far, and I think I'll be rowing for another 50. Words can't express how much rowing means to me. Most people see sports in general as a means of staying physically fit, but rowing is so much more than that. Like my mother mentioned, I have not only grown physically, but mentally and socially as well. The rowing community is a fierce one. Nothing builds camaraderie like heaving on an oar with the knowledge that 7 other rowers are pulling equally hard for you. From that bonding, I have found lifelong friends, a family that I can always rely on. We work hard for each other, pouring our blood, sweat, and tears into every 6 a.m. practice. It's like every other varsity sport and more. We train at 6 a.m. practices and leave the gym at 10 p.m. Few Syosset teams can boast a win at the state level and invitations to national and international level competitions. Mentally, I have gained so much strength as well. Rowers are unique in that we take pleasure from pain. We embrace it. No other sport pushes you to the same pain limit as a 2,000-meter race. Looking past high school, rowing has opened so many doors for me. I'm in discussion with Ivy League coaches as well as coaches from top 20 schools, hoping to continue my rowing career at a more competitive level in college. I'm only speaking on behalf of my team, but I promise you that if you had the time to talk to each of my teammates individually, their passion and adoration for this sport would be identical to mine. Rowing is not a sport to us, but a family, and Syosset would be remiss as to not provide this opportunity of community and friendship for the students that follow. Thank you for your time.
I almost feel it's moot for me to continue speaking about this after that presentation because I think it speaks for itself and the inspiration that I just felt from hearing that. But I do want to add to what was just discussed. My name is Jean-Claude Santini. I am a resident for now 34 years in the Syosset Central School Districts, going to South Grove, Thompson, and Syosset High School. I'm going to also read a little bit from this so that I can kind of focus. So good evening again. Even though I'm sure it goes without saying, I think it is important to acknowledge the opportunity to stand up and speak for what one feels is right, but more importantly, to advocate for the children, the young men and women attending the Syosset Central School District. The reason I'm in front of you tonight is to advocate for the district to consider rowing crew as an official sport and school-sponsored junior varsity and varsity level athletic program, in hopes that the district's involvement will result in the funding initiatives needed to broaden the accessibility of the sport, giving all children of Syosset the opportunity to compete successfully as a student athlete, ensuring that state-of-the-art equipment, qualified instructional personnel, safe transportation, and required safety gear be provided by the school. I have 2 children in the district. This past year, during one of my daughter's soccer games, I happened to just be having a conversation with one of the parents and said it would be great if Syosset had a crew team. And another parent mentioned, well, in fact, they do, which I didn't know. So this summer, I started investigating, how to get my children involved. My daughter will be starting high school next year. My son will be going into 7th grade. And that subsequently put me in touch with the athletic department and gave me an opportunity to speak to the parent liaison, Ms. Sarafian. And after we spoke in brief, she updated me as to how the program works. And I initiated a conversation with my children who seemed very open-minded. However, as I began to calculate all the costs of getting involved and continuing ahead, I felt a bit resigned, as this was a little bit beyond my means financially. So I gave up on it. And when my son asked me recently, what's going on with that, I told him I'm working on it. You know, I grew up in Syosset and was a collegiate-bound student athlete and head varsity captain of Syosset High School's football team in the class of '96 with Coach Paul Rourke, which I can't believe he's still working. Throughout my elementary school, middle school, and high school years, I participated in many junior varsity sports and intramurals that really helped me develop as a person. But one of the things I want to share with you is a unique story, and if it needs to be shared afterwards, I will. As a student athlete, I was unfortunately presented with this situation a lot of parents are today. My parents weren't financially as astute as others, and it was, you know, and they were a little bit more disadvantaged. So by my freshman year going into football, I needed to have cleats, and I got away with it by wearing my soccer cleats, which I had been playing soccer for years, and my coach LaFranc and Finnegan allowed me to play that first year with soccer cleats. My sophomore year, we had a new coach for offensive line, Coach Means, and he certainly was advocating for me to get the correct equipment. Went out, bought some shoes, got the cheapest pair of cleats I could remember getting because it was a burden for my mom to buy them. Junior year is about to start, going shopping, kind of put out there, hey Mom, can I get an extra pair of cleats? She indicated that it was a little bit beyond her means. You know, maybe if there's a sale, try to get a coupon discount. Never happened. Going into my senior year, I had gone to offense-defense football camp. I had a recruiter sending out highlight footage tapes to different universities, and I was actually accepted to do 2 different schools and offered grant money to play. Well, coming into my senior year, I didn't have new cleats. Third game into the season, it was our homecoming game, and I was collapsing the gap, which is a term used by football players, and as I went to pivot to stop an outside run, my cleat got stuck in the not the turf, which you have now, but the mud that was there, and didn't have the correct teeth to pull out, and as a result, I tore my ACL meniscus. And it took me completely out of sports. So one of the things I'm just mentioning here is not only is it important that we offer students low-impact activities like this, like rowing, and support that, but also support it to the point where we give students the correct equipment needed to be really successful and be safe. And that's all I wanted to say.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tian. I live in Syosset School District for about 8 years. I have 2 kids. So first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rogers and all the BOE members for your great job and for following the CDC guidance and helps protect our kids to be safe and require them to wear a mask. But just like some parents just said and quote some data, that mask is not the most effective way, right? It's the vaccination that's really help. So I vaccinated, my husband vaccinated, and my daughter, who is 14 years old now, also qualified for vaccination. However, my son, who is in elementary school, is not able to do that. So I wondered how would the BOE leadership plan to protect our kids who is not able to vaccinate it? And do you have data on how many teachers have vaccinated? Will you mandate teachers who are eligible for vaccination to get vaccinated? Because I know many companies already announced that their employees have to be vaccinated in order to go back to work. So I think that's something we should try to, use that as a guidance and to better help and protect our kids. The second question I have, which is not relevant to the mask, because we've been talking about that for the whole night. I'm sure people are a little bit tired of that, so I'm going to ask a different question. So I'm sure everyone here probably know that Illinois state becomes the first state to require teaching Asian American history in schools. I know Syosset School District, the D&I task force has been working on getting the Asian American history into curriculum. So I wonder what is the current status and how can we push that forward a little faster. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Klobus. I wear this shirt this evening with much pride, my Syosset Crew t-shirt, along with an entire closet of Syosset Crew gear. My family, over 10 years ago, we were the founders of the program. We started it. If you notice with us this evening, there were 2 sophomores who wanted to make a difference in their community. Rachel Klobus and Ryan Klobus standing here with me. On one Monday morning, someone knocked on my front door, and there was a racing shell on a truck being delivered to my house. I said, "Excuse me?" It was from Princeton University. Ryan bought the used shell after we went to a regatta and decided they wanted to start a crew team. The community got behind the team. We bought from all over the East Coast. We went to tag sales, garage sales at Harvard, Yale, MIT. We went to West Point and bought their trailer at an auction. We told them we were going to buy it no matter what. What anybody bids, add $50 to it because we need a trailer and we're going to go home with it. We were committed to making a difference in students, children's lives. And that difference has carried on now for 10 years. And here we stand tonight asking the board to please support the Syosset Crew program. It's a wonderful program. I can't go on and on. People that came up here before me, they said so many of the things that I wanted to say. Thank you for saying them. My thoughts are going in 100 different directions because I had so many thousands of wonderful memories. Memories of making a difference. And that's what we hear about. We hear about making a difference in children's lives, students' lives, community members' lives. It was a difference not just for students and rowers. It made a difference in many parents' lives. It's a tremendous program. We see it on TV occasionally when we have the Olympics. We hear about it in colleges, Ivy League schools. So many of our students in the first year or two wrote their applications about being a part of the crew team, the beginning of the crew team. We did not have a clue what we were doing. That's what made it so much fun. We didn't care about winning and losing. Everyone was accepted. There was no one turned away. There were no tryouts. You were on the team, and we had a seat in a boat for you. If we didn't have enough boats, we went out and bought more boats. We made it work. That's what the community can do when we pull together. And now the community is asking the school district, which has helped over the past 10 years. They have helped us with space. They have helped us with the buses and so many other things. Before I walk away, I just also want to say thank you to a parent who doesn't get that much recognition also. Lori Huey is in the crowd here. And for 5 years, she helped run the program. This is my son, Ryan. I know he wants to say a word or two, but I'm going to brag as a parent. Ryan was our first state champion in rowing for Syosset. I'm sorry, I just brought 2 props, if I could just show them. For most people who don't know, what does rowing look like, or a crew boat look like? This was the first boat that went out on a race in Syosset, 10 years ago. And all the great things that team did that year, they raised $8,000 in a charitable Rowtober regatta, and gave it to the Cohen's Children's Medical Center and cystic fibrosis. This is a program that gives back. Thank you for your time. Sorry I went over.
Hi. As my father said, I'm Brian Klobus, class of 2014. 10 years ago, my family and I, we founded the Syosset crew team. Very happy to report that we've come a long way from a single shell that was latched on top of an SUV. Definitely scary driving that around. So I gained a lot from this rowing program. It obviously helped me a lot with college. It was something great to put on my resume, but it meant a lot more to me than just that. I had been involved in many of the major clubs throughout my high school career, speech and debate, lacrosse, football, you name it. But this was probably the only experience where I really felt I had ownership over, and I felt that I had a goal or a responsibility to share that with other people. I don't know if it's with the sport of crew itself, where you have to be such an in-tune and synchronized unit as you're racing against these other teams, but also just the team itself and the community around the team had to be like that as well. We all had to come together through hardships, through any type of challenge, you name it, whether it was a sunken boat or a broken boat 5 minutes before the race was about to go off. We had to come together and figure it out. And that's how we were able to grow the team from really just 4 people racing in a boat to, when I had graduated, it was close to 60 or 65 people that were on the team at that time. I know the Syosset School District frequently recognizes and will help out with the Syosset rowing program. I remember my senior year to incoming freshman students, Dr. Durante was very happy to say that we had a rowing program and to really flourish all the benefits it gives to the students. To go one step further and recognize this as a varsity sport seems like the most logical step to me, and I hope that the school board can help us with that and finally recognize all of the hard work that many, many individuals put in over the last 10 years. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Yuresh Sheth. I've been a resident of Syosset for the last 16 years. I'm standing here in support for Syosset rowing to be a varsity sport. I, myself, am a former oarsman from Columbia University. And I'll tell you one thing. The lessons that I learned rowing for 4 years at Columbia have stayed with me for the rest of my life, had guided me in my career and in my approach to life. Among those is the concept of being a member of a team. You won't find in any other sport a more cohesive team-building sport other than rowing. What it does bring to the kids of Syosset is that they'll start learning these life lessons now, as opposed in college. They start developing friendships and relationships, and then they start to take those skills out into the world where they're valued. So I definitely want to ask that the board strongly considers giving varsity status to Syosset rowing. My son was a rower for 4 years here. He graduated back in 2020, and for the last year he's been an assistant coach for Syosset rowing as well. because of the pandemic. When he goes to school this Saturday, he'll continue his rowing career up in Albany. That's how long he's been with rowing. A lot longer than I have been, probably. But it has guided his life now, and it has given him a sense of purpose and a sense of guidance. I hope that hopefully with the approval from the board, that you'll give that sense of purpose and guidance to future rowers from Syosset. Thank you.
Hi, good night. How are you? My name is Jamie Scher. I live in Woodbury. My kids have graduated, but I have a lot of friends that still have kids in the neighborhood, and I'm good friends with Kelly, who spoke first. And I also am an attorney with an organization called America's Frontline Doctors. Some of you might have heard of it, aflds.org. I challenge each one of you on the board and each one of you in here to take a look at that website and see the work that we're doing. I've represented a lot of kids going into college who are fighting, having to be mandated to take vaccines. I can tell you some horror stories of kids who have died, kids who are not the same, kids who have shaking and everything like that, but I'm not going to waste the time right now and tell you all those stories, but you really need to go with what AFLDS is trying to say, what Simone Gold, she's a lawyer and a doctor, is trying to say is, my body, my choice. And most people who believe in these masks and vaccines, they're liberals, okay? And they say, my body, my choice, okay, as to abortion. My body, my choice. My body, my choice as to a vaccine, as to wearing a mask. So let's just go with the science for a second. You guys listen to the CDC, right? Everyone listens to the CDC. Well, CDC says that the PCR tests don't work. They don't work. There's lots of false positives. They do not work. But we're just going to keep using them till December because why? I don't know. All right. They also said the CDC has said that children, or sorry, not even children, asymptomatic people cannot spread the disease. In other words, if you don't have any spit or any kind of particles that can give it to somebody else, you can't spread the disease. But yet people come up here and say, oh, asymptomatic people can give it to grandma and grandpa. Because that was what was first said in the beginning, and then it gets repeated and gets repeated, and follow the science. It's not true. Asymptomatic people cannot spread it. So do your homework. Masks don't work. You heard Kelly say that after 20 minutes, the saturation, I mean, you guys are wearing it, you take them off, take them on, you touch them, you move around. I mean, kids, forget it, they pick the noses in between. But the masks don't work. So maybe you should get new masks for the kids every single 20 minutes or so, half an hour or so. Just change them. That won't cost the district too much money. Just change them. Or maybe the parents should do that. But no, most parents, they leave them hanging from their mirrors, you know, in the car. They're driving, and then they wear it again and again. And then when the air is blowing, they're blowing all the particles that they were supposedly keeping out of their faces. But yeah, let's just keep the masks on because, you know, they're working so well. Your mouth is the dirtiest part of your body. Think about your body. Your mouth is the dirtiest part of your body, and you're breathing in everything that's coming out. So do you know how many eye infections have happened this past year? Do you know how many skin infections? There's actually a 26-year-old woman that died from a skin infection. You know that skin-eating disease? I don't know what it's called, but yeah, she died because of wearing a mask all day that she was forced to wear at work. You know what? I'm going to tell you one of my stories because I have the time. So I have a couple kids that go to Cornell, and one of the moms was crying to me because her son's best friend was a football player at Columbia, and 25 years old, just finished, just graduated, got the vaccine, and died the next day. I have another resident of Plainview, a 24-year-old girl leaving to go to South Dakota. I'm not going to use names. Leaving to go to South Dakota to get a new job with USA Today, and her boyfriend, her 25-year-old boyfriend who lives in Farmingdale, was supposed to drive her to South Dakota. When he took the vaccine, he went to bed. He didn't feel well. His father went in to wake him up, couldn't wake him up. Okay. I know my time's up. Let me just see if I have one last point to make. Somebody said something about finding out who's wearing vaccinated, who's not vaccinated. Don't forget, you have HIPAA laws. You cannot do that. And you can't put people in separate sections, because then, let's just go back to the whole civil rights thing. Back of the bus, you're going to be in a separate section if you're not vaccinated? I mean, you got to think, because you know what? Lawyers, a lot of ambulance chasers, that's not me. They're going to be after whoever makes these decisions. So this is really, I'm heeding you a warning, okay? Don't make the wrong decisions. My body, my choice. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who hasn't yet gotten a chance to speak that would like to address the board? Is she coming down here?
I just forgot to sign in on my sign.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Biondo, and I'd like to thank Dr. Rogers and the board for adopting the guidelines that the CDC put forward and the American Academy of Pediatrics. I feel very strongly about this. I was watching at home and had to come down here. The Delta variant, as you know, is more contagious, and it's a different virus than it was last year. Children in schools down south who are not wearing masks, as you know, are dying, winding up in the ICU, and in quarantine. So I applaud you for being proactive and doing what will keep our school open and keep the kids safe, especially unvaccinated children. I have an elementary child and middle school. I believe in science, I believe in masks, and I believe in the vaccine. One other thing, I agree with the vaccine mandate for teachers. I'm hoping that will come down from the state, or a testing option for teachers that are exempt for religious or other reasons. But I think that would be something beneficial. And I think now children are more symptomatic, and I think this is even more dangerous than it was last year. So I am very concerned, but I'm hoping for the best, and I believe in the masks, and I'm glad that you're implementing that this year. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has not yet spoken? Okay, we will do our best to respond to this, to the questions that have been asked to us.
All right, there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm not going to say anything about rowing, even though that was a large part of the audience to the public, because as you know, the board is going to have a discussion about that later. I've done some preliminary research and shared it with the board, and obviously they'll keep their own counsel as to what to do. Clearly there are two sets of opinions about masks, and the decision that we've made is that we feel that the most conservative posture is to do the thing that has kept us safe this year, and we believe will keep us safe in the coming year. We did read extensively the guidance from the CDC, including all of the additional appendices that were attached to that. I personally read a lot of the research that was cited by the CDC in order to understand it better and evaluate some of the decisions that they were making and understand as best we can where they feel like the risks were being mitigated and what compensating factors there were for those risks. So in the end, we have recommendations from the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and of course the State Commissioner of Education who oversees schools. So there are basically three things about the masking. The first is the masks themselves are what are going to allow us to remain open and stay open, because if we are not at 3 feet, we'll have to be at 6 feet. If we're at 6 feet, then we will not be able to have all kids in school. If we're at 3 feet and kids are unmasked, the contact tracing rules are going to be different. And what we'll have are significant numbers of students that are quarantined every time there's an individual who has COVID and is in a classroom. So that could result in lots and lots of disruptions, not just in students being taken out of school, but in potentially their instructors being taken out, which is disruptive to everyone. The other thing about this consensus of recommendations is if we decide to not follow that consensus of recommendations, then we will be the liability that will attach to the adverse consequences that may come will then be the school district's liability for disregarding the consensus. So for that constellation of reasons, safety itself, the ability to keep school going and hopefully uninterrupted, and then the liability that is associated with disregarding the consensus that we've been given, all argue in favor of masks. A number of people asked about vaccines, vaccine mandates. I'll try to lump them all together into a single answer rather than go through them individually. I'll just say we've been advised by our school attorneys that we don't have the authority to mandate vaccination, so it's not something that we have pursued, whether that is for students or for staff. We don't have the authority to mandate that. So that's not something that we're considering because it's not something that's within our ability to do. In terms of some of the more specific questions, we can certainly make available online. I'm imagining that we'll probably do an FAQ document, as we've done with so many other things these last couple of years. We can make available links to the guidance that we got from these three entities, the supporting research that they're citing so that they're easy for individuals to find. The question about how we grant 504 exemptions. The 504 process is a statutory process that the school district follows when we're accommodating the individual health needs of any individual student. That process is specified in law, and of course the reason for the school physician's involvement is so that there's consistency in how we apply those recommendations. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Nina. So Dr. Rufo, I know that we were enthusiastic about the opportunity of offering kosher and halal and vegan food at the high school. I also know that food service had one of their finest years ever in feeding pretty much anyone who needed food in the community for the last 22 months. But I also know that it interrupted a lot of their other plans. Dr. Rufo, can you just tell?
Yes, additionally, we've had a transition of our food service director, and I know the prior food service director had a conversation with some seniors in the high school about making these transitions, and she is actually still in contact with our new food service director, so I will apprise her of those conversations to determine what plans, and additionally when those menu selections might be rolled out, given that we continue to operate with somewhat of a limited menu just due to the situation in the cafeterias.
Dr. Rufo, just a quick food service question since we're on the topic. Last year, food service was free. Is it going to be free this year? And if not, is there going to be a link disseminated to the community so that they could sign up for the prepaid for the secondary schools?
Child Nutrition has indicated that the USDA has extended the free meals program for this school year. So one breakfast and one lunch will be free each day. Snacks are not part of that program, so we'll be sending out instruction about signing up for paid as well as pre-ordering in the elementaries and middle schools.
Going through the rest of my notes here, there was a question about where we are incorporating the teaching of Asian American history into our curriculum. There have been some summer curriculum writing projects going on. One of the things that we had hoped to do and that I had announced at the end of the year last year is to take some of the activities that we did do in May during Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and put those throughout the curriculum. And in speaking with one of the leaders of in our local Asian community who suggested to me that we focus on the positive contributions that Asian Americans have made to America as part of that curriculum as well. So we've been identifying some of those. I also just wanted to touch on a point that was made about whether we can collect vaccination data and whether we can act on that collected. Thank you. Okay, I apologize. I think I've killed the battery on that one. So in order to identify who would not be quarantined, we will have to ask for vaccination status. What we've been advised by both our attorneys and by the State Education Department guidance is that we have to be as careful with that information as we would be with any of the other protected health information that we have for students or staff. And obviously, we have a lot of that protected health information because we know about student allergies, student health problems, et cetera. So we have no plans at this time to ask for vaccination status, so we don't know what percentage of teachers or students are vaccinated. We don't plan to ask for that. We only plan to ask when it's necessary, which is in order to relieve somebody of the obligation to be quarantined. And I agree with the parent who said that we wouldn't want to create separate sections or segregate people by vaccination status. I think for all the reasons that were stated, that'd be unwise. And I know I said I wasn't going to comment on rowing, but if you'll indulge me one moment of levity, I did have an interesting mental image when you, Mr. Klobus, talked about garage sales at Harvard. I was trying to imagine what exactly that might look like. So with that said.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things. Obviously, we recognize that there are competing voices when it comes to the mask debate, and as a parent, I feel very responsible, as I know all of you do, for your children and their health and safety. But as a board member, we're also responsible for thousands of other children and other staff members. We take that very seriously, and when we do make decisions, it's always in the best interest of the people that we're responsible for here. I also won't comment specifically on the application for rowing now because the board is going to discuss that in a few minutes, but I did want to mention, Michael, that your comments about rowing being a family and that you're working together for each other. You know, we all hope that that's what our student athletes get out of their sport. You just spoke very eloquently of it. It was about it, and it was very touching, so I wanted to mention that. And to the Klobuses, obviously, your story is very inspiring, how you took the initiative and just thought about where you could get the equipment, and your success story, obviously, Ryan, with your with the culmination of the state championship and beyond. It was inspiring to me, so I just wanted to mention that. So With that, is there anyone that had any other questions or comments before we close audience to the public? There is Kelly. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just finish this up quickly. So I was talking about the, along with the physical effects of wearing a mask on children, there's a substantial psychological effect that includes the activation of the flight or flight syndrome or fear or stress syndrome, rise in stress hormones, stress, chronic stress conditions, fear, mood disturbances, insomnia, and depression. So what I'd like to say is we as parents and board members, we have to weigh the benefits versus the harm that we are imposing on our children. If the harm outweighs the benefit, can we as parents advocate for mask usage? And I, for one, cannot. Even the potential of minimal harm is enough to prevent justification of mask uses in school-age children. I maintain the right that everyone is allowed to choose what they want to do with your children. If you want to send them in masks, send them in masks. That is not where I'm not advocating getting rid of masks. I'm just saying let the parents who know the psychological or the physical effects that these masks are having on our children, especially from last year and what we went through last year, let us and our doctors make that decision. So I want to maintain the right to choose what's best for my child and not the CDC or the school board. As far as the mask debate goes, I want to support everyone's right to do what's best for their children. I want to support the parents who want their kids to come in masks, and I want to support the parents who do have reasons for their kids that should not be in masks. One thing we can think about is maybe just a compromise. Maybe we can transition from wearing masks 100% of the time to maybe letting the kids come in the classroom and when they're 3 feet apart, 6 feet apart, take their mask off. We do it when we go to restaurants. We go in, sit down, we take our mask off. These kids are 3 feet apart. Let them take their mask off. Maybe then when they walk in the hallway, everybody puts their mask back on. But when they get in the classroom, let them breathe. So anyway, it's something to think about, and I know that there's compromise. I know it's a healthy debate, discussion, and I appreciate you guys letting me talk. Thank you.
Hi, I have done crew for 2 years, and I know it's like the mask talk, but crew has been a major transformation, has made a major transformation in me. I used to hate like thinking about sports. I would think, oh, volleyball's with a ball, and oh, soccer is all these rules. But crew really brought something different. When I heard of crew, I didn't think of how hard it would be. I just thought, oh, my sister did it, so I'll try it. Turns out I didn't know I would go on a 2K on the erg and then suddenly just throw up and feel like I'm absolute on the floor. But it's something that brings so much motivation. When you're in the boat and they say, power 10, and everyone's rowing at their highest rating, and the stroke seat's rowing at, at a 30, it's kind of euphoric, and everyone's on the right speed. And I just think it's really amazing to have a sport that's not so dependent on running and getting with the ball and rules. And it was really amazing to find this sport because it's really motivated me to work out and become healthier as a person than I was before when I wasn't working out as much and was kind of not into working out, because the coaches motivate you and push you farther than I think I would have been able to go. And especially when you're on the erg, the only thing you're thinking about is getting that time down and getting that split down. And that's just an amazing feeling. And I feel like more people need to feel that feeling because I know crew isn't the only sport. I understand that. I know other people like other sports, but I love how it's a full body sport, and it really pushes you to the limit that not a lot of sports do. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for.
Could you tell us your name?
Oh, I'm Nikki.
What's your name?
Nikki
Nikki, what's your last name?
Atry.
Okay, thank you. You spoke beautifully.
Hi, I'll be very brief. I put my name before. My name is Jean-Claude Santini again. I was initiated to come here and to speak on behalf of Crew, and I think it's a fantastic initiative that they're doing, and I really am supportive of that. But as a parent, and having an email, and I read the message about the reopening, and I'm listening to all what's going on regarding mask mandates. I was a choral director, piano teacher, vocal music teacher for 18 years, and I'm very much aware of being exposed to germs, especially when you have 168 children spewing them at you while you're conducting them. And as a teacher / reflective decision maker, that one of the things I kind of was taught in university was to be a reflective decision maker. I would say that there's a lot of different sciences coming out, and I think that's what gives the conflicts of how people look and view masks and why they should be mandated, why they shouldn't. I do enjoy using them for different reasons. I rather not have to smell a person's lunch or their breakfast, but for what's being discussed, I think it's a lot for you guys to think about. And I just wanted to mention, I did send an email earlier this morning to all the board members indicating some of the science that I've kind of become aware of, and I think it would be interesting for you guys to look at it if you get a moment. Thank you.
I just want to respond to Dr. Rogers' comments on getting the staff and teachers' vaccination record. I know that in New York City now, actually starting from August 18th, that you are required to show your vaccination pass if you want to get inside a restaurant or into a theater or cinema. So I'm sure that is not illegal, and because it's already announced. So I wanted to. And also, I just wanted to make sure that the parents doesn't care which teacher is vaccinated or not vaccinated. We just want to know what kind of environment our kids are exposed, right? So we just want to know that how many percentage of staff and teachers has been vaccinated, especially for elementary and middle school kids who are not vaccinated. They are basically exposed to a unsafe environment. So if the rate shows like 80%, 90% majority of the teacher and staff has been vaccinated, we as parents will feel more safer to send our kids to school for in-person education. However, if it's very low, then I don't think any parents will feel that safe to send their kids over. So we really don't care about individual records. We just wanted to know the ratio, and I don't think that's and then also. This is special time, right? Everyone is so frustrated and anxious for so long that the situation has been lasting so long. So we really should take some actions to continue keep everyone safe and to not putting our parents in more worrisome situation. So I really want to make sure Dr. Rogers and the BOE leadership to consider that and we should take more bold steps to work on this. Thank you.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I also felt the need to say some things that I think all of you already know, and it's that masks work when everyone is wearing a mask. So a mask optional situation is less effective. And this is not about me, but I am a physician, and I've been wearing a mask for the last God knows how many months, 15 hours a day, and then 95. And surgeons have been wearing masks even before the pandemic, and we let them do 9, 10-hour surgeries on people wearing masks and trusting that they have the enough mental capability to do those surgeries. And the other thing is, in terms of the impact psychologically on our children, I think because we know that masks work when everyone wears them, we have the unique opportunity here to teach our children about resilience and empathy and getting through a crisis as a community. And that is not something to be taken lightly. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no one else who wants a second chance, then we will close audience to the public, but we'd like to thank everybody for being so respectful in their comments today. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Diversity and Inclusivity Task Force discussion. When we last spoke about the Diversity and Inclusivity Task Force, we asked the administration to provide us with some options to discuss with respect to how we're going to organize the task force. So I think we can go through this in steps. The first topic is terms of office, and proposal 1 was community members would serve until the task force completes their charge. Proposal 2 was that community members would serve for a defined term of potentially 1 year, but a defined term nevertheless. A new task force would be assembled if there is a subsequent charge from the Board of Ed. So first I wanted to ask the board if they had any comments about those two options. And just remind everybody that these are two options. That's not to say that you couldn't offer a different idea or a combination of. So, anybody have thoughts? I'll just say from my perspective that term limits allow for more voices to be heard and more involvement from community members who wish to be involved. And if there were no term limits, then we would have the same people and the same voices for the entire time. And with proposal 1, which is the community members would serve until the task force completes their job, just a comment that I don't think what this proposal means is that we'll ever complete the charge, because diversity and inclusivity has to be top of mind for the duration of us as a school district. So I think that the proposal really means that if we've completed discussions for the year, then potentially we would end it and then start anew the following year. That's my interpretation of it, but does anyone have any thoughts on that? Shani? Yeah.
I agree with you. I think more people should have chance to participate. But from working in PTA, 1 year is very short. Time flies, and by the time you get used to the system and know what you're doing, 1 year will be gone. So maybe we can increase it 2 years.
Do we have an idea how many people we're talking about here? I agree with 1 year.
Susan, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Shani. I think that 1 year goes very fast, and I definitely want to involve as many people in the community as possible. Maybe you could, it won't work for the first couple of years, but maybe a staggered rotating schedule. I don't think you're going to be able to replace the whole committee at once. So it might make sense to, it's a large committee if you're going to have 100 people, to maybe stagger it, once that, can come off and you could get 30 more people on and, rotate it, kind of like, have a 3-year term or a 2-year term or whatever it is, but stagger it so everybody's not coming on and off at the same time. So there's people who, kind of know what's going on and have been there, and either 2-year term or a 3-year term. That way they can, get involved, know what's going on, and continue, and it could be staggered.
Kind of like the Board of Ed?
Kind of like the Board of Ed.
Carol?
Okay, in terms of the frequency of the meetings, Dr. Rogers, how often do you expect the task force to meet a year?
What we've done is planned for quarterly meetings, so 4 times throughout the year, with some subcommittee meetings in between. Obviously, we didn't get that many meetings in this last year because we were focused on the reopening and the pandemic, but my hope would be to get to a place where we had 4 plenary meetings of the whole group, and then probably an equal number of subcommittee meetings.
Thank you. In that case, I do believe that 1 year is sufficient because we're meeting on a more frequently basis, and this way we'll welcome more participation from the community and from different groups. Thank you.
I was going to add that I agree with Carol in light of what Dr. Rogers just said. It seems like 1 year would be the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that given the new information, that 1 year is sufficient. We really want to maximize the amount of people that have an interest in the committee to be involved in the committee. Anyone else on this issue? Okay, so I'm trying to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. Next is community participation. And option 1 was that the district would compile a list of ex officio community liaisons from the PTA, clergy, CAS, and other stakeholders who would each be invited to send a representative. Option 2 was that each PTA unit, in consultation with their Cultural Unity Committee, would identify 1 to 2 parents to serve as representatives to the task force. Route 3 was that any member of the community who wished to participate may volunteer to be placed in a lottery for vacant positions. So does anyone have any thoughts on this? Susan?
To the whole community. I mean, the name of, it's diversity and inclusivity. And I think that if we don't expand it to include the entire community and give them, whoever wants the option of being on it, we're doing a disservice to the purpose of the committee. So I would strongly suggest, I strongly feel that it should be opened up to the entire community, and that people, regardless of their past involvement or, have strong feelings and want to get involved, and that this is a way for them to feel that their voice is heard and to get their feelings out and to expand, the voices that we hear, and that it's super important that we include everybody and find a place for everybody who wants to be included and involved.
I agree with option 3 as well.
Yeah, I actually thought that a combination of the 3 makes sense, and it's kind of for the same reason that Susan mentioned, more opportunity for others. So Route 1, which is a representative from all the stakeholders, I think that has to be, they have to be involved, obviously, because diversity and inclusivity is important to all. I think that each PTA unit should have representation as well. This kind of goes to what Susan had suggested the last time we spoke about someone from, at least one person from every building having a seat at the table, just so that they could weigh in on perhaps building culture. And ultimately, with the lottery, I think that's the only way we're going to be able to manage this this thing. And when we get to maximum size task force, we'll see that it's been recommended that we do have a cap, and that's because we can't we can't really work with, you know, hundreds or thousands of people who may be interested all at once. So I kind of like that combination of representatives from those groups, and then with however many spaces are left, invoke the lottery to get everybody in on that rotating basis that we talked about before. Susan?
Maybe we could do something if we're only going to do 1-year terms. Maybe we could do something with the people who don't get chosen in the lottery so that they can have some kind of priority for the next year. That if they're still interested, you know, that they have, if they missed it the year before, that maybe they have some kind of priority for the following year. I don't know if it's logistically too difficult, but that way the same people don't keep getting, you know, shut out of joining if they want to.
Shani?
If we are going in with the 1-year term, I think it's important to set up some sort of continuation protocol, because people who have been working on it for 1 year and then the next term many people turn over, then the direction of the force may change, and the work that they've been putting the previous year may not bear fruit.
Yeah, I think though that we'll always have the administration who is managing the group as a whole, and so that continuity will continue, and the efforts that those who participated in the previous year, if they haven't finished their recommendations, those recommendations or that work would continue because the management is going to keep track of that. So Dr. Rogers is that's kind of the way the allergy committee works, is it not? Where if we didn't complete a task or an idea, then the following meeting the management would raise that again to finish.
It was. I'm having two ideas to share with you. One is, you know, this having shorter terms will force us to use each year to come up with a work product at the end of the year. So hopefully there isn't work left hanging open that transfers over from 1 year to the next. But if there were, and if Ms. Frankel, as you suggested, you took a little from each pot, it occurs to me that the stakeholder groups are probably going to want to be represented by officers in those stakeholder groups, and those officerships may not change from year to year. So if you have people who serve because they represent a large group in the community that is interested in this topic, that may be the stability because they may want to have the same person year after year. And then you would have others rotate in around that. So you'd have some continuity, not only in the administration, but also in leadership of some of these affinity groups.
Does anyone else have a comment? Is there consensus around using the combination of the three? Yes? Yes? Yes. Okay, good. Subcommittee assignments. The proposal was individuals would be asked their preference for subcommittee assignment. Final assignments would be by administration and may take advantage of a particular expertise or to balance representation from different grade spans or communities of interest. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, okay, good. Board of Ed, our role, we would be ex officio members of the task force, but would not serve on subcommittees as subcommittee members in order for to allow them to make ultimately recommendations to us. So my only thought with this is I'm good with that as our role. I'm not okay with our only being reported to once at the very end when everybody's done their work and they're just letting us know what they've done, because we, as board members, this is a really important committee for us, and I know that we probably have some ideas to share or some feedback that we want to give back. So my thought is if there could be times throughout the year where we're participating in some way where we can, provide some feedback. I think that would be important. Susan?
I think that this committee is so important to a lot of us that we definitely want some kind of more active a role. And I mean, I totally understand that we want to be able to receive, the ideas and have that stuff put before us. But I would like an opportunity for us to have a more active role throughout the year also, and not just be reported to at the end.
So Dr. Rogers, maybe on that, we can give some further thought on how we might be able to interact with the rest of the committees. Thank you. And then for maximum size, the recommendation was task force will be capped at 100 members with a 5th subcommittee created for restorative practices so that each subcommittee has approximately 20 participants. Are we good with this? Yes? Yes? Shani?
I don't know if I'm being optimistic, but 20 from the community member may be too little, at least in the first few years.
I don't think this was meant to be 20 community members. I think it was that each subcommittee is 20 for 5, so that would be 100 community members.
I thought the 5 subcommittee as like the other participants that doesn't involve the community member. But this one is comprised of all community members of 100?
The way the task force has been structured over the last year is there are a lot of staff on the task force, but there are also community members that are participating because they represent an affinity group in the community or the Interfaith Task Force in the community. There are some representatives of PTA that are serving, so there are already community members that are here. And so what this would do is expand the number of community members that are participating in the task force alongside the staff. So I think we have 73 task force members now, so this opens up, a solid number, more than 20 people to join. And then by having another subcommittee, each one of those subcommittees would be 20 people, which I think is a pretty manageable number to do good committee work. And then we'd come together and just reflecting on what appears to be your consensus to want to have a more active role. I think maybe the place for dialogue is when those subcommittees come together and do check-in meetings with the whole task force, that the board would be more actively engaged at that point.
Okay, well, thank you to all of you for helping with that discussion. That was really important, and it'll be great to be able to get the ball rolling in September with this organizational framework in mind. The second item is the rowing club's application for varsity status. We've all received the application, and we've heard the presenters today. They're asking for varsity status and assistance, but not full financial support. So would anyone like to kick off that discussion? Carol?
Okay, Dr. Rogers, in terms of the coaching from the rowing crew, how soon do you expect the 2 coaches to be certified by New York State guidelines? Or are they going to be certified just in time for the fall season, or they would have to wait until the spring season?
So the requirements for someone to be a coach in New York State, there's trainings that they have to take, fingerprinting requirements, et cetera. We have not sat down with the Rowing Association to get into conversations about what the coaches may or may not have done already in order to be New York State certified. If they're already New York State certified, obviously there's no time needed. But if they have to go through some of those steps, take the trainings that are required, that may take a little bit of time. So I can't give you a definitive answer unless we sit down and talk with them about who the coaches would be.
Shani?
I have a couple of questions. What is involved in making a sport to be varsity and junior varsity, number 1? And number 2, they're asking for support. And at what point does the school take care of all the fee that is necessary so that the students and the families do not have to pay to participate in a sport? And are there currently any sports, varsity sports, that the students or the families have to pay part in order to join the team?
So rowing is complicated because rowing is not recognized as a varsity sport by Section 8. Section 8 is the Nassau County section of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association that represents Nassau County. That said, there are the designation of a varsity letter or something is what you as a board get to decide to do. So there are school districts that have rowing crew teams, and they treat them as varsity teams, but they're not treated by the governing body, the high school athletic governing body, in the same way because the governing body doesn't recognize them. So what that means is in those school districts that I know of that have crew teams, that would be Manhasset, Cold Spring Harbor, they have hybrid arrangements where not all of the costs are borne by the school district, some are borne by a booster club. So I think the genesis of that arrangement is the fact that they are dissimilar from all other varsity sports. But for the varsity sports that we have here, there are not costs of participation necessarily, although to the point that was made by Mr. Santini earlier, there are some things that students would buy for themselves, cleats or whatever, in some sports. But for the most part, football, we pay for uniforms and pads and all of those kinds of things.
Sorry, did you want to say?
I'm definitely in support. I mean, the presentations were wonderful and touching, and the kids did an amazing job, and so did the parents. And so I just don't see how, what the downside of that. Just like what we did for our gymnastics team, same scenario. As far as Booster Club, that's a great idea, and it's a great compromise to be able to support financially, in addition to whatever we as a district pay for.
Yeah, for me, I think that the fact that we have such a high interest in crew with 50 members, and they are, for 2 seasons of the year, they are considered a scholastic team. They're playing for the high school. There are other clubs out there that don't play for the high school, but the crew team already does. And so at this moment, we're not considering them varsity, but everyone who they're rowing with does consider them to be playing for us. And so, of course, we reap the benefit as well of their many accolades. So for me, just because one governing body has selected certain sports that they're going to control wouldn't and shouldn't prevent us from making a determination as to whether they're considered a varsity sport here. Rowing, the rowing body that governs rowing does consider it to be a varsity sport, as well as the colleges these students attend and play for. So it would be really nice for them to be able to put varsity sport on their transcript. I'm happy that the application is for partial support, because I do think we have to be mindful of what we're paying for other sports. This is a very expensive sport, and I know that many of the speakers had recognized that as well, and I think that's why the school districts that do support these teams are supporting them in part, but not in whole. And I do think we need to be mindful of that. So, for example, for coaching, I think, what we pay for our coaches is what we should be consistent in terms of the rubric that we use for coaching stipends. I do think that even though rowing is 4 seasons, since only 2 of them are scholastic, that we'd be only supporting the scholastic seasons of fall and spring, and not winter and summer. And then with respect to transportation and hotels, I would just want to be consistent with the way that we operate with our other clubs and teams and musical groups in terms of, state championships and national championships. But my understanding is that there are many, many other regattas in between that may be not local. And so maybe we can work out something with the rowing team or the Booster Club or even Oyster Bay in terms of splitting that. But at the end of the day, I'm very interested in turning this into a varsity sport. And so if there is interest with from the board, then maybe we could take a next step and try to have conversations with our attorneys and see about the legalities of the support from, a couple of groups along with the school district and supporting them, and maybe having further conversations with the rowing team and maybe Oyster Bay. So, Carol?
Okay. I am in full support of making it varsity after, everything that Tracy has mentioned, especially in terms of the cost, because we do have to be mindful. And then another alternative that we could think of is maybe cap the expense at a certain level, comparable to other clubs or Section 8 sports. And one of the, many reasons, just like the audience stated, is also that for our high school kids, we know that time is very tight, and they do need to have either 2 clubs or 2 sports or a combination in order to make it to the National Honor Society. And if we don't recognize that, then they are spending all that time but not being recognized. That means they have to spend 2 sets, double the time to make that requirement. And I just can't see that, happening to the kids, because time is really, they really don't have that much time. They only sleep 4 or 5 hours a day, and rowing takes up a lot of time too. So I'm definitely in full support of that. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Tracy and with Carol and with Anna. And obviously we've had very dedicated, very passionate parents and students. I'm a student athlete. I saw finding my way through playing sports, which got me confidence, the ability not just to succeed in sports, but then to succeed in academics, which then were lifelong ways to succeed. So I wish we had alternative sports, not just when we were going football, baseball, because maybe you don't fit into one of those boxes. I love the fact that we have co-ed. That's another great thing. And obviously this is very passionate, and I think the board, the crew team, we can make it work.
I'm sorry. Is there anyone else on the board who has an opinion? I've heard 4. Susan, yes.
Hey, sorry. I agree with you guys, but I also just wanted to add that listening to the kids and the parents, I was so proud of everything that they did. And I think that, the initiative and the hard work and so many kids, wanting to be involved, and how you guys started it from nothing and you made it into this whole successful organization. I was so proud, and I think that's what Syosset's all about. And I think that it was so wonderful. It made me smile listening. Nobody I think can see me, but it was really nice. I was smiling listening to all of you guys. I was so proud, and I think you're what Syosset's all about, and I definitely think that we should support them in any way that we can, because it was great. And I think that you're such a good example for other people to take an initiative and to be able to start something that means something to them. So thank you for everything you guys did.
Is there anyone else who wanted to comment on the board? Okay, so this is not a formal resolution right now. The board is interested in making this a varsity sport, but I think there needs to be a next step before we could really resolve it. I think we need to speak with the attorneys and the other groups to see if an arrangement can be made that's mutually agreeable. So with that, Dr. Rogers, we give our blessing to take those next steps.
Okay, so just checking for consensus. I didn't hear anyone on the board that was not in favor of moving forward. You'd like us to take the next step to come up with some hybrid arrangement. We'll need to explore what that hybrid arrangement looks like. We're concerned about seeing how quickly we can start, and so that will involve us asking some questions about how close to ready they are to go in the environment that we need to be so that we're consistent with the regulations. So we will begin those conversations as quickly as we can in order to move as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you. And the last discussion item is the frequency of Board of Education meetings. Lisa Cosia.
Thank you, Ms. Frankel. I just wanted to suggest the possibility of adding extra meeting dates to our calendar. I think it would allow for us to have extra time to address certain issues that we may be going over time, as for like an overflow meeting in certain months. I don't think necessarily we would need it every month of the year, perhaps not in the summer or like in months such as December, where there are holidays and limited calendar dates to begin with for school, but just an idea that I thought maybe we could address as a board and have a discussion about. Perhaps we pencil them in, and then if we use them as on a need-be basis. If we need them, we use them, but if we don't need them, just kind of let them pass by. So I just wanted to suggest it and see if any board members had any opinions or thoughts on it. Thank you.
Mr. Greco?
I agree with Lisa. I think it would be a very good idea. I like the idea of it being an if necessary meeting. I think she referred to it as an overflow meeting. I guess one of my questions would be, these dates would be put in the calendar very early, and we would probably be looking at certain months that are either often busier, like maybe a September meeting, an October meeting, and a March meeting. Would we be able to do that in a way where we could put it in the calendar from day one and then decide at the end of, say, March meeting number 1 that we don't need that additional meeting? And that's as much of a question and a comment in the same. I'm just confused with how we would actually effectuate, do we need this second meeting? But I like the idea in principle.
So as all of you know, in the beginning of the year, we'll get well, not even in September, but well before September, we will get an email that indicates all of the board dates so we could put them in our calendar. Those get put on an agenda so that with the calendar, so everybody in the community knows that those are the dates of the public meetings, and so we know to save those dates and not book our own appointments or family events because we know that we have the board meeting. So I don't see, maybe Dr. Rogers, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see a reason why we couldn't at that same time also have the potential other date given so that we too can know in advance. I'd only say from a scheduling perspective, I could see how difficult it is when we do have, and we've had a lot of extra meetings in this last year, as everybody can imagine, how difficult it really is when you have a 9-person board to, on a month-to-month basis, try to get everybody together at once. And more often than not, we will have 1 or 2 board members who are unable to attend, and it's, not the best situation for them or for us, because we always, we always want to operate as we're intended to operate. So I do like the idea of knowing in advance that we have these alternative dates if we need them, and not necessarily be married to having a second meeting if there's no need for it. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Tracy. I also agree with you and Lisa. As you had just noted, we have had these meetings anyway. We're a very active, engaged board. It's 10:45 tonight, so there's a lot of material that we cover. So that would be a big help to have those scheduling meetings in the calendar. If we need them, we can use them. Obviously, if there's nothing of priority, we don't have to use them. But at this point, we are meeting. We are very engaged. The board has a lot of questions. We're very involved. And I think it would be easier for us to do our job, especially as far as scheduling. That with 9 people, it's very difficult. So I agree that penciling in, having an overflow meeting makes a lot of sense.
Did anyone else want to weigh in on the discussion? We can, Shani, yes? Was that I didn't hear you.
I agree. Sounds good to me.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on just pre-scheduling meetings in the event that we need them? Anna?
How many? Which month? How many meetings a year would you say? Would you guess we would put on the calendar for this floater second meeting, overflow meeting?
I don't know exactly the logistics, the exact number, but I'm just thinking, obviously in the summer months in July, August, or even, June, July, August, perhaps we could really skip those months. But then throughout the school year, I feel like if we could just get those dates on a calendar, maybe we eliminate December because it is usually a short month with at least a week or so where we're having a break in there. Or perhaps, over the spring break, that may pose a problem as well on those months. But I think if we could schedule, let's say for argument's sake, not to hold anybody to the number, but maybe if we could schedule, let's say 5 or 6 extra meeting dates in the calendar, would just allow us to have that time penciled in so that in the event that there are extra topics or things that come up last minute that perhaps need a vote or need a little bit more of discussion time on, we know, okay, so for this month, we're going to be back in contact in 2 weeks, so we can figure the rest of that out later. That's why when, the word overflow comes to mind, because it's not really for, well, it could be for new items too, but I'm more so thinking about items that we don't get really time to finish on or may need to add to.
I just have a question for Dr. Rogers. From operational standpoint, would that be very helpful to you? Like sometimes we have a last-minute meeting that we have to call up. We had so many last year. Would that alleviate? Would that help at all? Or things come up regardless, and I guess in that case we could have it, an in-between meeting and cancel the other one that is on a calendar. I mean, is that how we see this working out?
So I've tried it both ways. Nassau BOCES meetings were twice a month. Here in Syosset, once a month, and they each have their pros and cons. So Here's a night where we're going to be here until 11 o'clock in the middle of August. That's atypical for us, but there's something big on our agenda. So I think a lot of times what keeps us busy is not tied to the calendar, but it's tied to something that pops up in the community and becomes relevant to everyone. What I did find at BOCES was when you knew that there was another board meeting just around the corner, sometimes the level of urgency to get some things onto the board meeting was not quite as high internally as I would have liked, because there was a sense that, well, the board will be back together again in 2 weeks and we can just do it then. Whereas the once a month does drive a lot of internal discipline. The flip side is, if you meet more often, it will provide us with more opportunities to tell you about some of the things that are going on internally. And we would use the time in that way. I can't tell you that one is better than the other. They both they cause the rhythms of the organization to work differently. I think this year we've had a lot of supplemental meetings because we've been trying to move a lot of reopening projects along quickly that require board approval because the board has been gracious enough to allow us to staff the organization as quickly as we need to. But there are some things where we have to go through the state and I need the board approval. And so we've had to pull the board together to do those kinds of things. And we were obviously trying to move quickly. I'm hoping that we don't have as many really urgent projects like that because I like the organizational rhythm to be a little bit more disciplined internally rather than just pulling people together to do it. But I can't say that we won't use the time effectively. I can't say that I can guarantee I know which months we're going to need extra meetings.
I think ideally, because this is this is the first time we're discussing it, and we don't have all of our board members together, but we would be discussing changing the way we operate in some way that maybe we can continue this conversation together. This was a good first discussion, and then perhaps we speak about it again when there are all 9 and decide what we want to do. Does that work for everybody? Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, there's no unfinished business, and there is no, there is new business, plenty of it. A0 will be the resolution to approve the reopening plan that was described by Dr. Rogers at the superintendent's report. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A1 is the approval of staff changes. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Casilla, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A2 is the approval of 2021-22 stipends and hourly rate activities. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Casilla, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A3 is the approval of unaligned staff and employment agreements. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A4 is the approval of certified athletic trainer. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Park, seconded by Ms. Casilla. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A5 is the authorization of additional pay for coaches. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B1 is the approval of Committee on Special Education recommendations. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Mr. Greco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B2 is the approval of Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Casilla, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B3 is the approval of the revised school calendar 21-22. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Park, seconded by Ms. Casilla. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B4 is the approval of the district-wide school safety plan and building level emergency response plans. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Mr. Greco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B5 is the second reading and adoption of policies for equal opportunity and diversity, equity, and inclusivity in education. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Park, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B6 is the first reading of policy for school admissions. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All right, this policy will be voted on at the September 13th board meeting. A copy of the draft policy will be posted on the district website. B7 is the approval of a settlement agreement. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Chang, seconded by Ms. Cosia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B8 is the acceptance of internal audit reports. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C1 is the authorization for service contracts. May I have a motion, please? Dr. Park, seconded by Ms. Cosia. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C2 is the authorization for special education and nursing contracts. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C3 is the authorization for contracts with Nassau BOCES for services for the 21-22 school year and final authorization for the 2021 school year. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C4 is the approval of an engagement letter, disclosure, and consent agreement and consent to join representation. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Cosia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C5 is the award of Nassau County Director of School Facilities Purchasing Consortium cooperative bids. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Cosia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C6 is the appointment of individuals to serve as volunteer judges for forensic events. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Levitan, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C7 through 9 can be taken together. They're the authorization for piggybacking with Levittown and Omnia Fresno school districts. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Cosia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C10 is the award of bid for video recording and live streaming. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Mr. Greco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C11 through 13 can be taken together. They are the authorizations for deduct change orders. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C14 is the authorization for change order for air conditioning. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Cosia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Carol, are you in favor? Or okay. Opposed? Any abstentions? C15 is the acceptance of a donation for $26.24. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C16 is the authorization of the disposal of broken surplus and or obsolete equipment and books. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for those of you who stuck around.